Hello, hi. Today I'm going to explain about the lab, Databricks lab. So there is a scenario like I took the project, so that is e-commerce data. So in this e-commerce data, so what I'm doing, so I'm going to load this data dynamically into the Databrick notebook by using Databrick notebook and loading into the Delta table. So this is my scenario, and this scenario you might face in your real time and interview perspective. Okay, so this is the best solution where you can implement this. How we are going to implement the end-to-end data loading from source to bronze layer. Okay, so first we will load the data till bronze layer dynamically. Okay, so in this e-commerce data, so I took some of the data like events, order items, orders, product, so reviews and users. So these are the CSV file format. What I'm going to do, so I'm going to create one config table for this. So with the names of table name, file path, file format, header, infer schema, and load type. So these are the config table parameters. Okay, so by using these parameters I am passing into my delta table, and I'm going to save in the format of delta. Okay, so this is my branch layer, and here I'm going to show the model as well. So if you see here, this is my model which I have developed for this one. So events, and we have a event ID here as a primary key, and user ID, product ID. If you see here, this is the relationship between each table, raw table. Okay, so I have represented, so product ID is matched with the multiple product IDs, and order ID is matching with the multiple order IDs, and user ID is matching with the multiple user IDs. So for each and every individual table is represented with the primary and foreign key relationship. So this is the model which we will use in real time as well. So based on your data, first we will develop this kind of model, and then you will start doing the data ingestion in any of the projects. So first of all, you need to understand how your data will be, and later on you will start doing the data ingestion process. So this is a model where I'm using to load the data. So let's quickly go on to the Databricks. So basically here so you can use the Kaggle to get the reference data sets. So here you can download this. I will paste it in my YouTube channel. You can download this. And so first step is, my very first step is I'm going to create the config table. So that is my first step. So I'm going to give my table name as, so ecom config table. So this is my config table name, and so this is my serverless compute. So I will use the serverless compute. Okay, and let's quickly execute this one. So once you execute this, so it will create the table. So first step is I'm going to create the table, and I'm going to pass the values. I will tell you step by step. So here table step is running, right? So now if you see here, so these are the parameters. So my tables I'm representing, so this is my table name. If you see here, table name, file path, file format, header, infer schema, load type. So what type of load it is, whether it's a full load or incremental load. To represent this, I have added as a load type. Okay, so currently what I'm doing, I'm manually ingesting this one. So here is the table name is, so events table name, right? So to understand this, I have given branch events, and as well as these are my file paths where my files are located. And what is the file format? File format is CSV, and header is equal to true, and infer schema is equal to true, and load type is full. So similar way, so if you see in this diagram, So all these are raw tables, raw files. So all these raw files I have created the with respect to of folder location and as well as all the with respect to details here. Now let's execute this. So once you execute this command, so this will creates the config table for your data ingestion. And then later part we will do the data load to the branch layer. Okay, so that is our next scenario. So let's try to load this and then we will try to check whether the data is loaded or not. Percentage SQL and select star from. So my table name is ecom config table. So this is my table. And if you execute this table, so you can observe the data over here. Okay, so let's one more time we will execute. Okay, we have given the incorrect table name. That's why we are seeing this. So let me give you the proper config table name so that you will see the data now. Okay, so now let's try to execute this. So now this will represents the data. You see here, all the data is available. So this is my config table. So what I will give, I'll give the name as ecom config. Okay, so this is my config file. So when I'm scheduling, right, the pipeline Databricks notebook, I can easily call this notebooks as a front line so that we can execute it. So again, I'm going to take the second notebook. Okay, so this is my, I'm going to represent branch data load, ecom branch. Okay, so I'm going to give like this the name. And so now here is your actual things will start here. Okay, so your actual coding things will start here. So what I'll do, I'll first read my data. Okay, so we'll read the table. Okay, so I'm going to give the data frame name as config underscore df is equal to, so I'm going to read my table first. Okay, spark dot table. So it's a table, right? So I'm going to read my config table. So my config table name is this one, right? So we have already created the table name. I will just copy and paste the table name. So the command to read the table is spark dot table. Okay, so you have to give like this way. Okay, so spark dot read dot spark dot table, and this is my table name. And now I'm going to give config dot display. Okay, so you can give the display also, either of the way to see your data. Okay, so let's first check the data over here whether your data is populating or not. So we need to validate in a step by step. So for each when you are loading. Okay, so my data is perfectly working fine. And so here I'm going to do some data validations over here. Okay, so config underscore list, I'm going to list my data. So I'm going to use the data frame. Okay, so config underscore data frame, and here I will use the collect statement. So collect also will display the data, but this remember this, collect don't use for millions of records if you have, but this is fine to use 100,000, 2,000. So these many minimal number of records you can use collect, but real time when you are working for the large data set, this is not recommended. Okay, so remember this one. For this is for my to represent the data for training perspective, I'm adding this, and that too this is very small table, right? So now I'm going to print, I'm going to write one print statement. So here, so f, and inside this function print statement, I'm going to give total number of total table to process. So I wanted to know how many tables are there to process. Okay, so I will list this, and So at the moment when I selected, so the statement it is suggesting, that is length of config list. Okay, so this is fine. Till here we have done this one. Now let's try to print this. If you print this, it will show the total table count. Those are 6 tables we need to process it. Okay. So now I'm going to write the another statement. So that statement going to load my data. This is the important one. Dynamically now I'm going to load my data in a dynamic fashion. Okay. So now so we'll start using this. Um, I'm going to use the for loop because if you see here, I, I have 6 different files, right? Okay, so these 6 different files, we need to iterate one by one and we need to load. We are at a time loading this. Okay, remember this, I'm not loading only one file. Okay, I'm loading multiple files. Okay, so that's why I'm using the Python functionality to loop my files. Okay, so because we have so many files, right? So that's why I'm going to write this for loop and row. So I'm going to keep my config list here into the rows. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so config list. So in the config list, so this whatever the data from we are getting from in this statement, so we are passing to the row. And then so here I'm going to give some print statement so that in real time, right? So when you are suppose example, if something goes wrong or if you did not receive any process files or something. So this will be useful to understand whether the data is processed or yet to process. So this kind of thing you can represent here. So I am using the table name, what table it is currently processing. So that I am currently reading it. Okay, so this is my statement row. So because we are passing the config list to rows and here the row and the table name. Okay, so what is the table name? And we'll write this statement. Okay, so we'll rewrite this statement and I'm going to use another print statement that to represent the file path. What is the file path of this? So you can use depends on your requirement. Okay, it is not we are not predicting that this is only you have to use it, but it depends on your scenario. You might get some issues in real time, right? So based on your scenario, you can give this particular print statements to understand whether your data is properly processing or not. Okay, so this is very useful when working in real time. Now I'm keeping into a try block. Okay, so try and exception, because don't directly you loop the data. So in production, when you are doing, always better to use try catch blocks. Okay, try and exception, so that we will come to know in case of any issue. So you can capture these issues. Okay, so I'm going to give df underscore data frame. So this data frame, I'm going to pass my command. Okay, so that is my command. So that is spark dot read dot format. So this is the format, and here step by step we have to allocate the values. Okay, so format is like, what is the format? So everything is coming in the parameters, right? If you see here, for us, everything is in the coming as a parameter. You see here, file format is CSV, header is a parameter, info schema is a parameter, load type is a parameter. So here everything dynamically we are passing. So that's why you have to give row. So row is the one your entire data is captured dot. And so what you are going to give? You are going to give the file format. So what is the file format of your data? Okay, so that I am going to give. Now file format I have given, right? So let's try to break this one instead of keeping in a single line. So what I'll do, I'll just give some breaks over here. So let's try to align this in a proper manner. Okay. So try to align this, and here also try to align this as well. Okay. So format, and then I'm going to give another statement, that is option. So always see this, ideally when you are reading any file, right? How you will read spark.read.format, and you will read header is equal to true and infer schema is equal to true. Like that you will read, right? But here we are doing everything with the parameterization, right? Dynamic. Okay. So that's why what I'm doing, so everything I'm passing as a parameter over here. Okay. So header, and then so header will be true, right? So this will be passed as a parameter row dot header. So this is my parameter. Okay. So this will pass the parameter as a header, and then another option. So that is the infer schema. Okay. So infer schema means, so it will assign the default schema. So based on the data, it will suggest the schema. Okay. Infer schema. Infer schema means, so it will suggest, okay, it will automatically take the schema values. Okay. And that schema you can use it for your data. So again here row dot, so for each parameter you are passing your dynamic value, that is your row dot, and infer schema, infer schema value. Okay, so this is the one which I am passing here. So now I have given the infer schema, and now I need to load the data, right? So what I need to give here, row dot path. If you see here, so file path. Okay, so you need to give the file path over here. Okay, what exact name you have to give, whatever here it is there, right? File path, file format. So same name you should give here. So that is the row dot file path. Okay, file underscore path it is. Okay, now I have written everything. Okay, so I have written the data. So whatever it is required. So I just added everything. Okay, so row dot file path. Okay, so you can take load, and this is what we have done. So now I'm going to give another print statement. So this print statement, so I'm going to read how many records it contain, each file. I'm going to print, example, event is the file name. So how many records it read, okay? How many records it contain. So those kind of thing which I am printing here. Rows read, how many rows it read, okay? So that how you are going to get, you are going to get here by using data underscore df, and so in the, so we need to get the count, right? For each data we need to get the count. So just add the count. Okay, so that's simple as it is. Okay, so you can just simply add this one, and you need to give the quotes, and then so now I'm going to use the some other column values. Okay, so we'll use some imported timestamp to understand, example in real time, right? So always we need to know, right, when this particular data loaded. So if you did not give any imported timestamp or ingestion time or something, we don't know whether the particular data is processed, or the job exactly it executed or not. So that we don't know. We don't have any audit, right? So that's where I'm going to give the values like ingestion time. So the ingestion time will be the default, like, so I'm going to give current timestamp whenever it executes. So that will print the current timestamp. Okay. Example, now time is 7:38. So it will print the 7:38 as a time, so that we will come to know that so this particular process is executed within like 7:38, so that we'll come to know that data is executed into that particular file. Okay. So now here another statement, that is source file. What is your source file? Okay. I wanted to know whether the what source file it is used. So this I am using because in real time, example, sometimes it file might changed or it might take the old file. So to maintain the audit, okay, to understand whether it took the right file or not, so I'm using the source file to understand whether it picked the exact value or not. Okay, so this I am getting whenever you are working in real time. So the metadata path will be useful. Okay, so this gives you the file path where exactly the data you are reading it. Okay, so now let's try to manipulate this, and here I have written everything, right? Okay, so now I'm going to write the data. Okay, so data.df and write mode is and save mode and save as a table. Okay, so this is the exception in case of any issues or something. So this will capture the exception values. And so here I'm going to write another print statement. Okay, so what is that? I'll write print successfully, print. So I'm going to use F. So created, and then row table. Again, I'm printing the data. Okay, row table, and I'm printing the values. Okay, so that's why I'm just utilizing this and just add the codes. Yeah, that's it. So now again in the exception part also we'll write F, and so error in. Okay, so in case of any error, so we'll print this error as well. So this statement will print the error whether table have any issue, so it prints that particular table value. Okay, so that's what I'm giving here, and then I will raise it as a exception E, and this is the value. Okay, so here is the exception, and I'm seeing some issues. Okay, so here there are multiple things. Current timestamp we need to export, and column functionality also we need to import from the SQL functions, because these are directly won't come. So we need to import the with respective libraries. Okay, so from PySpark dot SQL dot functions. So in the functions, um, so don't take all the functions, because whatever is necessary is you can use that particular or library. Don't use star. Okay, in real time or production environment. Example, if you have all functions are useful, then you can use it. But if you don't use all functionalities or all functions, don't represent all at a time. You can give manual way. So that is my suggestion for a best data practice. Okay, so now I have done the data, like my code is ready. Okay, so entire thing which I have done, I have completed the part. Let's execute it, and we'll observe here. So there are some issues. Okay, so let's check. Let's debug that. What exactly the issue? So print statement having some issues. Let's walk through this first. So there might be some white spaces. That might be the reason, but let's try to figure out those. Okay, and here exception. So let's fix this, and then exception. So accept exception as E and print. So this is what I have done. So that, yeah, now let's execute it. So path, processing BZ event path, some issue here. You see here, row and path. So it is not, okay. So you see here, it is not able to recognize your parameter, path parameter. It's a file path, right? So it's not able to understand. You have to give the file path. Okay. So let's correct this one and let's try to execute this. Now you see here, so the file name and file path, okay, and everything which we are getting here. Okay. So now save mode have some issues. Attribute save mode is not supported. Okay. So let's try to give, so error bz users. So these are all the record counts. Okay. So now let's try to trace out this. So where exactly the issue here? So now let's try to manipulate it. Write mode row, and so what else we can format. Let's try to give format. So in the format, I will give delta. So let's quickly fix this issue. Okay, delta and mode. So we have already written the mode. Okay, so delta mode and save as a table. Now let's try to re-execute this. Okay, so attribute save mode is not supported. What it is exactly? Save mode. So save mode, what it is there here. Okay, so we need to check this one where exactly the issue is. So let's quickly understand where exactly the issue. Save mode attribute are not supported. So the save mode is this one, save as table, and so table name, write delta. So I'm writing this delta. Okay. So save mode. So we need to correct this, right? We just wanted to know. So these are reading the files. Okay. Row underscore save mode is correct. And delta. Okay. So instead of this way, let's try to give some other way. Okay. So I'll just overwrite here. So instead of, so always these are raw tables, right? So we will save this as a, so don't use this one. So save table, so remove this one, save table, row dot table, and so override, because these are the raw tables. I don't want any history because we have already, the history is there. So I don't want any history here. Yeah. So now all the data is successfully inserted. Okay, so we have fixed that issue. Now let's try to run the data. Okay, percentage SQL, select star from BZ users. Okay, here are my users. Okay, so now you will see the data, right? Users data. Okay, so similar way all the data is loaded into the bronze layer. So these are dynamically get loaded into the system. Okay. So now let's try to in next session, right? So I will use this all source tables, and then I will join, and I will perform the silver layer and gold layer. Okay. So I will explain in next session. Thank you.